Hi there. It's Graham Healy from Yunjinda Healy and Healy's Integrated Self-Defense Academy. This question tonight is simply this: is boxing the best form of self-defense? You know, got a lot of people out there with different self-defense um, criteria, I suppose. And is boxing the best form of self-defense? Well, um, I suppose the answer to that is it depends on who the boxer is, and it depends on who the coach is or who is teaching the particular techniques. So my initial answer, and we've got Manny Pacquiao sitting over behind my shoulder here, is as far as um, a footwork and as far as speed of hands, as far as the skills and drills set of a boxer, um, you really need that as part of your toolbox in self-defense. Now, you know, a lot of people define self-defense as a whole lot of different things, and depends what level we take it to. But the short answer is boxing the best form of self-defense? Yes, it is one of the best forms of self-defense because of its mobility training in the background and speed, power, timing, accuracy, all that sort of stuff. So in my opinion, and you know, I come from a boxing background. My grandfather was a professional boxing coach, also was a professional fighter. My father was Queensland state champion 1948. And I've trained people in boxing skills and drills for, well, I started when I was 14. I'm 67 now, so you might as well say 50 years worth. Now, a lot of martial arts instructors or even Thai kickboxers from Australia, um, to name a couple, one's Paul Briggs, and then Wayne W. Parr. Um, you know, they've held world championship kickboxing tournaments and what have you. And they've dedicated, well, especially Paul Briggs has now dedicated himself as a full-time boxing instructor, whereas he did start in kickboxing. So, you know, there's a crossover between the two. And then suddenly, as an example, there was one guy that I remember, Kim Gray, I think his name was, in Townsville. I knew Kim, and he was the Queensland champion kickboxer, basically. And he was quite good too, I remember, in the day, you know, back in the 70s, the Bruce Lee days. And, you know, he got publicly challenged by another mate of mine who held 3 Australian professional boxing titles, an Aboriginal guy called Neil Patel. Now, Neil's a good friend of mine, and, you know, I knew Kim Gray as well. And I was quite surprised to find several years later that Kim Gray is now a boxing coach. He transitioned basically from the kickboxing side of things into just pure boxing. And all I can say about that is, look, everyone has a different level in their understanding of boxing. And the skills that you get from boxing, especially timing, footwork, you know, you just can't beat it. Now, I'm not generalizing boxing. I'm not talking about, okay, is Muhammad Ali better than Smoking Joe Fraser? You know, even though I've met Smoking Joe Fraser, and he's absolutely a great guy before he passed away. And, you know, Joe Bugner and all these guys, and Costa Zoo. Johnny Famechon just passed away recently. You know, I'd met Johnny Famechon quite a few times. Azuma Nelson, I've met Azuma Nelson, all the greats, Australian greats, especially the Australian greats. I've met most of them with my father, and they, you know, through the Boxing Hall of Fame, the Australian Boxing Hall of Fame, of which myself and my father were sponsors, and of course we were members as well. Went to many great events, and these guys in boxing, they're a tough breed, and there's some characters in boxing. You know, like Costa Zoo's, we were a great fan of Costa Zoo, a great fan of Manny Pacquiao, and the list goes on. I mean, I'm a fan of Lennox Lewis. George Foreman. I correspond with George Foreman. I have done in the past, reasonably regularly. The greatest, probably the heaviest hitter of all time, George Foreman. And of course Mike Tyson. He's a in his past he's a bit of a bad boy, but he's become a really nice guy these days. Unless you stir him up in an aircraft and have too much to drink, he is Mike Tyson at the end of the day. And then of course, Tyson Fury, the big 7 foot, almost 7 foot tall heavyweight that can move like a middleweight. Look, everyone adds a dimension in the sport of boxing, and of course, I do like what's it? Not Lennox Lewis, but I'll think of his name in a second. He's a great heavyweight, Vladimir Glitschko. In his heyday, his style of boxing, the straight big hitters, that's my style of boxing, Dad's style of boxing. It's sort of long range, mid range, get in, get out, and counter punch them. So, I mean, the list goes on. I love watching, the past fights of the greats, Sugar Ray Robinson, Sugar Ray Leonard, all these guys. I mean, they were the tough. Boxing was a very, very tough game and still is. But some of the old timers, especially around World War One, Two, they were doing 15 rounds. They were literally, most of them were like meat workers. I mean, my it just wasn't a Rocky movie. That was reality. I mean, my boxing coach, Reggie Kirkham, was a meat worker from World War II, 15-round fighter, great guy, fantastic bloke. And the thing is, in boxing, you meet a lot of good guys there. I mean, they might be tough in the ring, but you meet them outside the ring, and usually, bar a few rat bags, but usually they're nature's gentlemen. They leave all the scientific stuff in the ring. It's like Costa Zoo, great guy, but in the ring, I wouldn't like to be meeting him in the ring. So, let's separate boxing, the skills and drills from boxing, from self-defense to a degree, because it is a self-defense. Take the gloves off and you've got someone who can punch like a machine, and you better be quick and fast to be able to counter that. And I won't get into the styles and all this because there's several different boxing styles, but I'll say this much. It's a bit like, I'll give a little quote from my grandfather. When I was 14, I was in his boxing gym in Gordonvale, which is near Cairns. He had an old picture theatre, something like it was, all the seats were taken out. There was wooden floor. And most of his fighters were Aboriginal fighters from the Arabar Mission. And of course, I sparred a few of these guys, and they had Darryl Darkey there. There was the Grogan boys were there. People in boxing know who they are. And my grandfather, as a young guy at 14, I remember saying to Granddad, what's the best punch in the book? And he looked at me, and the fighters are all skipping and everything, and they all stopped to listen to what he said. He said, and he had this real gruff voice, "Oh, what's the best punch in a book, son?" Just like a Rocky movie. I sort of lived it. And he looked at me with those, cold stare that my grandfather had. He was a racehorse trainer as well, by the way. And he said, "The first one, boy. The first one." I never forgot it. I never forgot it. And, in all my experience, which, I don't have a big claim to fame, but I was a main sparring partner for most of Queensland state champions. As I say, Desi Greaves, pro champ. Neil Paddle was started at the NFC before I left. I went over to Reggie Kirkham's boxing academy, and I forget what suburb it was in Townsville, but we had the Batali brothers, both state champions. We had Simon Temple of the Saint. We had Johnny Atherton, Queensland professional heavyweight champ. We had all the champs at Reggie Kirkham's gym, and Robbie Thompson, Queensland middleweight champ. So I was a sparring partner for all these guys. I actually I loved training, and I loved the sparring side of it. And I didn't ever saw myself in a career of being the next Costa Zoo or something. I sort of went down into more education, and I've done 6 years of medical science these days. So, and then I went into martial arts after boxing. But my last boxing match, as an amateur, I fought a professional fighter. There was a ring in to try and get them to beat me. A bloke called Terry Brooks at PCYC in Townsend. That was one of the best fights I'd seen there for some time. So there's plenty of action in that one, don't worry. So what I'm saying is this: is boxing the best form of self-defense? These days, I'm a martial arts instructor as well. And my comment on that, I've got 3 levels of self-defense. One definitely is boxing. 2, after my boxing career, I went into Taekwondo. And then I became a founding instructor for Yun Jin Do, which is, a refinement of Taekwondo, actually. And then thirdly, I brought an Israeli commando over to Australia in 2007, Monty Isaac. Now, he was a 7th Dan in jiu-jitsu and a conditioned combat soldier in Israel. So he basically filled the gap. So for me, boxing was my primary pillar. Number 2 was Taekwondo / Yun Jin Do / mix of different techniques with kickboxing and that, because I had Jason White there at my gym for many years. He had over 200 kickboxing fights and was in the stable of JW Parr and what have you. So I learned a lot of Jason White, and I thank him for that. I'm about learning techniques and then applying them as counters to different styles and things like that. And then, of course, the third one was the commando training. And Monty Isaac, I become the national director of Commando Krav Maga, but a bit too much politics for me. And so I integrated that into my system as part of it. So I did the Bruce Lee thing: absorb what you shall, disregard the rest. And the commando training was very good because Monty was already a 7th Dan qualified in Japan in jiu-jitsu. So his way of doing things was wrist locking and shoulder locking and all these different locks. And there wasn't a grappling technique that he couldn't get out of, not as in sport, but as in reality. It was a reality-based Israeli commando. So I put those 3 together to form, Healy's Integrated Self-Defense Academy. I also teach Yun Jin Do, Healy, my version of it. And so I suppose the answer to this little chat is boxing the best self-defense? I think, in my experience, which is now 50 years, I'm 67, boxing is an absolute necessity for any martial arts instructor, for any of these so-called MMA experts. Boxing, you need at least 7 years boxing to be able to be competent at it, because it's not about, I have a look on the internet and I have a look at all these guys doing all this, flicking and switching and, ducking and diving and all this sort of stuff. You run into a boxer that can hit, just like Mike Tyson said, everything sounds good till you get it. Whack, bang, you get the big one right in the nose. Straight left. Well, the other guys in my grandfather's gym, one of the other guys, I remember asking this guy, he said, you know what the 4 best punches in the book, son? As a kid, I said, what's that? And the fighter said, well, straight left, straight left, straight left, and straight left. So, in the reality of real self-defense, when you take it out of competition, you take it out of the rounds, and you put it into a self-defense situation where you're protecting your family or friends. It boils down to basics, and you better know those basics really, really well to be able to survive. So whether you're doing commando, whatever art you're doing, it flicks down to probably half a dozen real solid basics, and you just hammer those basics time and time and time again. I had one guy who was a bricklayer in my class, and he'd done a fair bit of kickboxing. He only had He had a low kick, and I think a low kick and a couple of straight punches. That's all he ever did, actually. But if he hit you with a low kick, man, you were down. And I learned from that experience that all you need is one technique to take him out. And that's each art has got it's what I call the takeout technique. So in closing, yes, you'd have to put boxing as one of the best forms, but each martial art has its key technique. I like to say it's a DNA. You can't be a master of everything. And especially in the sports stuff these days, I mean, they're all over the place. I mean, look what's happened to Taekwondo. I don't like it these days. My generation's back in the Korean Army days, like the Tiger Division. The Tiger Division, have a look on my website, Commander Krav Maga Australia.com or yunjandohealy.com. You have a look at the Tiger Division. They were in the Vietnam War and they took out the Viet Cong without weapons. They had weapons, rarely needed them. It was unarmed combat with those guys. Right, that's the original Taekwondo, deadly. Now they've turned it into a tournament sport, and the tournament sport, it's just absolutely not my sort of scene. I'd rather be training the basics in the background, and if something happens to you, okay, you apply it. But most of the time, we're sort of, we want to have a happy day, and we don't want to, project violence or anything. We want to really learn the art, and that's the difference between martial art and martial sport. What I'm doing, and you can click the links below, I'm doing martial art. I'm not doing martial sport. I'm not interested in that. I've already done my, full contact boxing and everything like that. I'm interested in teaching people skills and drills and they don't get hurt. So it's like with the boxing, it's like, okay, it's a boxercise style training, but you're learning the correct boxing techniques that I've learned without going through all the headshots that I've gone through, right? And same with the martial arts training. You don't have to, you do all the focus mitts and all that. You don't really need to be actually using someone else as a strike pad. So my father had a lot of wise sayings, and one of them was, even in the boxing days, he said, son, he said, never let anyone use you as a punching bag. Now, in Dad's day, they used to, because he was a state champ, you'd get a lot of characters coming in and want to challenge Bert Healy. Same in martial arts, you get all that sort of stuff. And so it depends what level you want to take it to. Anyway, I'll tell you a little story before I finish off. This guy came in. Dad used to run the boxing at Innisfail near Cairns, just outside Sugarcane Town. I'm from Innisfail originally, and he ran the NFC boxing there. So anyway, this big cane cutter comes in, and he wants to challenge Bert Healy, spar. They said, I want to spar Bert Healy. And Dad looked over, and this guy was about 3 stone heavier than Dad, because Dad was, featherweight fighter actually. Fast and efficient, but he wasn't a big built man. So Dad said, look, just wait till I finish training. And he said, oh, I'll have a look at you then. So he finished off training his boys, and he said, okay, glove him up. And Dad knew what he had to do. So what he had to do was just take this bloke out, because that's what you do when someone wants to come in to the gym and challenge the trainer / Queensland champ. So, they lined it up. And of course, as Dad said, this guy was like 3 stone heavier than him. And so Dad, he was a very classy, quick, smart fighter, very much like Johnny Famechon. Anyway, he just moved around this bloke and bang, hit him with the right chip over the top and split this guy's eye right across here. I had to put about 10 stitches in it. And Dad said to me later, he said he slumped, he just knocked him straight out, about 2 hits, bang, down he went. And as Dad said to me, he said, never let anyone use you as a punching bag. See, they come in, they want to challenge the champ and all the rest of it. And so what you've got to do is deal with them, not as in fair, I suppose, but you've got to sort them out real quick. And that's boxing. That's a self-defense. Boxing as a self-defense is bang. You give it to them, quick, smart, take them out, and have a good day after that. And the other thing I'll just add in here is when we talk all this sort of stuff, I'm not, in the real world, I've done that. But, in the legal world, which you've got to look at the legality, especially in Australia, it's proportionate response. So when I do stuff these days, my defense is always open-handed. So rarely do I actually hit someone with a fist because I don't want to do damage to them. So, there's a whole lot of areas in self-defense that, I could go in there, but I'm not going to in this video. So we'll just answer that question again. Finally, just, is boxing the best form of self-defense? And I say yes, it's one of the best forms of self-defense. And my advice to all those martial arts instructors, be it kickboxing or whatever, the MMA or whatever they are, go and learn some decent boxing. Go to a good boxing coach to learn the skills and drills at least, because a good puncher will take you out as soon as look at you. And, that's my advice. That's Graham Healy. Healy's Integrated Self-Defense Academy, which includes a long line of boxers. So, have a great day. That's just sort of subject I'd have a bit of a chat on. And regarding what I'm doing now, I'm not teaching competitive fighters or anything like that anymore. I don't do much sparring or anything, but I still do my bag work. I still do my combinations. I still do the floor to ceiling, all that sort of stuff. And I teach others the skills and drills. So you want to learn that sort of stuff. You want to learn what I call the skills and drills without getting hurt, like you're an executive fitness person or whatever. Just click the link below, have a phone call with me, and we'll have a chat, and we'll see if you're a good fit for us. But if you're a competitive fighter, or you're competitive MMA or whatever you're doing, cage fighting, all that sort of stuff, yeah, I wouldn't suit you guys. You've got to go into some club that's, 10 gladiators flogging the crap out of each other. That's fine. You're into that. I'm not into that, nor are my students into that. I'm teaching all different ranges of families, the skills and drills without getting hurt. Use the focus mitts, all that sort of stuff. They don't want to be competitive fighters, the people I'm teaching these days, which is probably the vast majority of the population. But if you're interested in martial art as versus to martial sport, then give me a call below and we'll have a chat. Okay. Have a good day. Thank you very much for listening. Graham Healy over and out.